Sometimes a developer will pledge all their hopes and dreams on a gimmick, and no game I can think of did that more than die by the sword. Treyarch, yes, that Treyarch, were the developers behind this sword and board adventure, and this being one of their first ever games, they clearly wanted it to stand out from the crowd. No other manual I've ever come across is this insistent on saying, look, this isn't like other games, this is very clever stuff.
Die by the Sword is the beginning of a new generation of games and technology. Once you play and become accustomed to the greater control of your character, you will never be able to go back to the old technology that limits your control. The physical-based modeling technology created by Treyarch called vSim is a huge leap forward for games, bringing with it new techniques of gameplay that were never possible before. This technology is just in its infancy, and we haven't begun to scratch the surface of its possibilities. The vSim technology is really the future of animation and character control. Die by the Sword will become a classic and will be forever known as the game that set the standard.
Die by the Sword sold less than 30,000 copies in the USA. $28,604 copies to be exact, and while the figures for other territories don't seem to be available, I suspect things weren't much better. Humble beginnings, Treyarch. Humble beginnings. So what is this? What's going on? Why is the first page of the manual an advert for something you've likely never even heard of? Well, instead of using static animations for the game, Die by the Sword instead adopts a physics system. That's what vSim is, in a nutshell, a physics system by Dr. Peter Ackerman, with the grand idea of making games more realistic to control. Broadly speaking, the idea was to throw away the concept of just pressing a button and watching your character perform an action on screen. vSim would allow you to control a character's very limbs directly with your mouse and keyboard. How cool would that be? This is me trying to hit a target dummy. This is how the game feels to play. You can see the struggle, and you're not even playing it. If you listen carefully, you can actually hear me losing my mind. You see, you've got the option of 3 different control schemes, one of which is the sensible option. The other 2 use the vSim technology to its fullest and make a difficult to control game even more difficult to control. If you decide to use the mouse, you're supposed to be able to control your sword arm with that mouse, but doing so feels like you've sat on your hand until it's gone numb and then attempted to pick up a can of beans. It's nigh on impossible to actually hit anything at all, ever. I'd feel more in control using a steering wheel to play Crash Bandicoot. So as an alternative to that, you have the keyboard version of vSim. With this option, you use the numpad to direct your big useless arm about. Want to do a standard sweeping motion, for instance? Well, according to the instructions, you'll need to hold keypad 6, then release it, then immediately press and hold 4 to swing from right to left. Then, when you're in the left position, hold 6 to return the blade to the original position. Intuitive enough, but bear in mind that these are just the controls for one arm, and this is just one basic movement of that mystical arm. As the tutorial begrudgingly guides you through all of this, you'll be taught the rest.
I have watched your technique, and I find your abilities to be reckless, undisciplined, and
absolute bollocks.
There's standard movement on WAS. You can strafe with Q and E, which I immediately forgot after learning. You can double tap any direction to dodge that way, you can jump, you can roll in the air for no apparent reason, you can press C to grab ledges, you can jump and press C to grab ledges in the air, but you can't do that while also holding forward. It doesn't actually tell you that, but I thought it would be good to mention it now because it may or may not come back up again.
It will. It will.
There's also special moves. Special moves? They also have their own keys. Insert, home, page up, and delete. Perfectly placed where no human hands will ever touch them, which is just as well because they're pretty much useless. If you fancy attempting to make some slightly less useless special moves, there's a built-in moveset editor. I did not touch this once. Now, if you've any sense, what you'll do is opt for the thing the game specifically tells you that you shouldn't do, and that's arcade mode. Arcade mode simplifies the controls to a degree, although everything is stuffed onto the numpad still. 4 is a high slash, 5 is a mid-level swishy swoosh, and 6 is apparently for aiming at the head, but 90% of the enemies you come across are smaller than you, so good luck actually lopping anyone's head off. 1, 2, and 3 are apparently used for blocking and parrying, but you will never, and I mean this sincerely, never use those. There's a low, a mid, and a high block, but your chances of ever getting these correct are close to nil, so ignore them and pretend you never heard about them. That just leaves a few more controls. Yes, there are more controls. Sheath and unsheath is backslash, use is asterisk, and pressing 2 allows you to see through your protagonist's eyes, which you'll probably use approximately once in the entire game. Okay. So, controls out of the way, of which I've probably forgotten some because apparently every button on the keyboard is used. Let's see how all this fares when it comes to the actual game. Notice here, though, that this is very specifically pushing you toward the idea of limb damage. Now, limb damage is a thing, yes, it occurs throughout the game, but even if you had the ability to aim for specific limbs with any sort of accuracy or finesse, its usefulness is minimal at best. We'll come back to that. Tutorial done, we head back to the main menu and, yeah, this happens. It does this in any menu. Presumably it's not supposed to do this, but it will happen every single time you open the options menu or the main screen. Just be happy it hasn't fully crashed and move on with your life. That, dear viewers, was the totality of the story that pushes you forward through this game. Man and woman sitting at a campfire, kobold attacks, man chases kobold, woman gets kidnapped. That's all you get. Ironically, in the manual, you get 7 whole pages of backstory on this character, Enric, the man with the most basic of motivations, following his life from the age of 16 as a farm boy, all the way up to whatever age he's supposed to be now as a warrior. You also get 2 pages on Myla, although why they bothered with that I don't know, because I think the only thing you hear come out of her mouth is screaming and then a slight giggle during the end credits. Here we are though, straight into it with a fight, and 2 things to note here: the camera. The camera is wild and there's absolutely zero way to control it. Secondly, Enric has about 4 stock phrases he shouts, one of which is, "Your head like a kobold!" Yes, Enric, that would make sense considering that's exactly what you're fighting. You'll note here that there's no UI to speak of. These actually need to be turned on manually if you want to have any idea of what your health is, for example, so I'd recommend you do that. It probably won't stop you dying in the second room of the game, however. Now, you might be quick to assume that the developers were out to create a game that just wants to kick sand in your face all day long, but Die by the Sword features an autosave system. Useful because it doesn't actually let you save manually at any point, and this thing will autosave you after pretty much every single room you enter. You'll be thankful for that, because the chances of you dying in every single room you enter is incredibly high. A perfect example of that is the 3rd room of Stage 1.
George of the jungle, strong as he can be.
Yeah, that's a rope trap. There's no way to know there's a rope trap. I've no idea how you get out of the rope trap. I'm not even 100% clear how you avoid the rope trap, but the biggest problem I've got with this section is that I'm practically dead before I've even got to this room. I've fought 4 enemies. I'm right at the start of the game, and I'm at death's door. A rope trap at this point is simply a straw balanced on a camel's back, mere seconds away from snapping it in twain. After 20 odd minutes of trying and failing to kill an orc while I'm hanging upside down, I decide it's likely best that I just restart and try to get back here without half of my limbs falling off. After another 10 minutes, I make it back to the rope trap room with barely any more health than I had last time. I guess it's time to get good. Or not. 30 minutes and I've yet to get past the third room. Let's start again. Okay, as close to full health as I'm gonna get. Let's do this. Well, this is going better. You may have noticed that our orc friend here has just sort of stopped working. That can happen, and it's not something you want to take for granted. You'll notice at various points that I'm still taking damage, even though he's not really doing anything. And that's because the weapons are constantly active. If I run into it, it acts just as a weapon should, and does me a bad boo-boo. This is very realistic. This is also exceptionally difficult to actually do anything about. Thankfully, your enemies suffer the same fate with your sword, so at least there's that. Fair's fair. After finally flailing my way to victory, we move on to the final room of Stage 1. A dock featuring 2 kobolds and an orc, which the camera absolutely does not know what to do with. It's worth pointing out here that your controls act relative to where the camera is pointing, which makes me look like I'm terrible at the game, and I am, but it's really not helping matters. This is also where I point out that the blocking mechanics I mentioned earlier are completely useless. How you're supposed to work out which button to press while 3 different enemies are attacking you and the camera doesn't even know who to look at is anyone's guess. After finally slaying those enemies, you board a raft, cut the rope, and sail off down the cavern toward... Before that though, an interesting thing. After each level is finished, you're given a sort of achievement list, and some of those achievements are either stuff you would have just done anyway, or things that are completely detrimental to you as a player. Getting caught in the rope trap gets me points. Why? Anyway, it's cutscene time, and first we're shown the kobold's progress of kidnapping your female friend. All very useful information. And then we're shown another enemy, some sort of swamp monster. That'll be the boss of this stage, right? Nope, it's the first enemy you have to fight, and also the second, and third, and it might even be the fourth. But the first one takes place on a raft, and you know that's going to be messy.
Merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
Merrily, merrily, merrily,
Gently down the stream. Merrily, merrily, merrily.
Well, it was messy, but I did it.
I don't know about you guys, but that's a win for me.
After a few more scraps with giant fishmen, I stumbled across the mother of all fishmen, who I presume is going to be a tough fight, but thanks to the completely unpredictable nature of fighting in this game, it accidentally turned out easier than any other fight. Also, I now have a son.
But take your time, think a lot.
I didn't know that at first. I was trying to kill him under the assumption that everything in this game is death incarnate, but no, he just follows you around for a bit, and then he shows you a potion hidden behind a waterfall, which would have been more useful if I wasn't going to check behind the waterfall anyway, because come on, it's a waterfall and this is a game. Of course there's going to be something behind the waterfall. The Fishman Nest also features one of the game's very small amount of equipment items. I'm talking like 3 or 4 at most, according to the instructions, and this one is a ring of shielding, which apparently gives me 25% more armor. I notice absolutely no difference whatsoever. The rest of this stage is fairly straightforward. More fishmen fights and a double orc fight, and it's at this point that I start to realise something. I've been playing this game for over an hour now. I can barely control the damn thing. It's incredibly linear. It feels like it's hanging together by sticky tape and blue tack, and yet, for all of the jank and nonsense and frustration, the game is keeping me going, and it's doing this in a few ways. Firstly, it barely stops to breathe. You move from one room to the next, always checkpointed so that death never sets you back further than the room that you're in. Outside a few exceptions, of course. You leave every fight by the skin of your teeth, but it feels like the devs knew exactly where to put health items, so you'd always have just enough to get you through to the next area, even if that meant running away so you could go and eat a leg of lamb halfway through a fight. The story never stops the action, the level design never stops the action. I think I may actually be enjoying this. 16 seconds that cutscene was, no dialogue, and yet it just told me everything I needed to know. The orcs have got the lass, 2 dudes dressed up in Black Manta costumes have got into fisticuffs with one of the orcs, and I'm going to need to find a new way around because there's been a cave-in. 16 seconds. Beat that, Hideo Kojima, you wordy bastard. By this point, the game is quite happy to throw at least 3 enemies at you at any given time. You'll still have no idea what you're doing, but running around pressing 5 on the numpad generally gives you a fighting chance, and searching the bodies after a kill will often give you health back. Look at that! Full health after the first room. I'm amazing at this game. After fighting through a minecart room, I reach a room simply described as a punishment room, which involves 2 orcs smashing a kobold around like an inverted swing ball. It's during this fight that I have to take advantage of the game's very necessary tactic of running away from a fight to go and pick up health items from a previous room to stop myself from dying. After a quick game of Kobold Swing Ball, I check one of the side paths and discover a room full of holes too small to crawl into. It has torches in the middle of the room, along with a circle of pots. Not exactly grand designs levels of decor in this place, I've got to say.
Now, each of these ideas may seem risky and experimental, but in fact, they're all proven in their own areas. If
Treyarch
is taking a risk here at all, it's in bringing these different
jars of nothing
together in one
cave.
I smash the pots, there's nothing in them. Thankfully, there is another route. Almost every room features a locked door, the key to which is located on an enemy from that room. It's a basic kill the enemies or you're going nowhere wall that it puts up, and that's fine. At least it stops you getting confused about which way to go next. For the most part. It's in here that we come across the scene from the FMV at the start of the level. The orc is currently mid-fight with a mantis creature, but instead of just letting them duke it out, I immediately jump right into the fight like an absolute idiot and get leathered. I'm not dead though, so that's a small victory, and I refuse to go back to the autosave as punishment for my idiocy. At first, it appears there's no way out of this room until I notice a weird-looking, jagged section in the rock. Not the easiest thing to see because everything is made out of brown. I realise it's climbing time, and the autosave helpfully tells me I've walked into a mantis hole. This should be fun, considering I'm pretty much dead already. It is, as you would expect, a shit show. There's a tunnel that leads to 2 mantis enemies, tough buggers who deal a fair chunk of damage and have a moveset I'm unfamiliar with. Not that it really matters, because I've no idea how to deal with any moveset anyway. If I back off down the tunnel, the camera gives up. If I go into the room, I'm fighting 2 enemies that I've absolutely no chance of taking down. On one attempt, I spot a potion at the end of the room and decide to just quickly drink it to see if it fills up my health. It instead shrinks me. A plan forms. I realise now that the purpose of this room is to drink the shrink potion and then go back to those holes I couldn't crawl into from earlier. What if I was to simply run in past the mantis enemies, drink it, then run away? Amazingly, it works. Unlike a drunken Alice in Wonderland, I'm absolutely racing down the tunnel in short form, hoping to God a mantis doesn't strike me in the back. Thankfully, they're too dumb to work out how to get down the climbing section at the end of the tunnel, and I'm scot-free. The next part of the game took me 10 solid minutes of wandering to get through. You enter tunnels, you come to a room with more tunnels, you go through those tunnels and come out somewhere else, and you keep doing this until you eventually get to wherever it is you're supposed to be going. This sounds incredibly frustrating, and I won't lie, it's not exactly fun, but the game does go some way to alleviate the random nature of exploring here. Each tunnel generally features a spider's web which you walk through and break, meaning you always know which tunnels you've already gone down. That doesn't really make me forgive the 10 minutes of boring walking through brown tunnels, but it did help. You will also enter a couple of battles with kobolds here, and you'd think it would be more difficult considering your new stature, but it actually turns out to be easier because you're now the perfect height to actually hit them. You would have thought they'd have noticed this in playtesting, but I suspect at that point they just wanted to get the game out of the door. Once you've dealt with all this boring shite, you're provided with a very unexciting minecart ride, which you'll probably hope is leading to the end of the level. But more fool you, it's leading you directly to a fight with a new enemy, an ogre. Thanks to sheer luck, instigated by a programmer changing a 1 to a 0, your shrink potion wears off, just in time to go one-on-one with the big brute, and it's at this point I realise just what it is that's getting me through this entire game. It's hilarious. There is nothing nuanced about these fights. from neither myself nor the giant ogre who keeps smashing me from one side of the room to the other. But my god, is it kinetic. The physics engine employed in Die by the Sword has turned this game from a generic third-person hack and slash into a game that is wildly unpredictable. It's not working how the developers intended it to work, but at this point I simply don't care anymore. Die by the Sword has accidentally become amazing. Well, this isn't looking good. Mila's about to be sacrificed by some sort of orc witch doctor, but at least we're still hot on the trail. After the first room, where we fight 3 different enemies, one of whom is a new soldier class of orc that absolutely hits like a truck and has more armor to boot, we've got a choice of pathways. I go through the right-hand pathway and, yes, thanks, autosave. I can see that. Do I... Should I... This is probably doable, right?
What's going? What's going? What?
Okay, maybe not. How about if I just jump across?
What's going?
Okay, maybe not. How about if I just leave? What occurs next is what I'd like to describe as the mid-game lull. Not necessarily because the game has gotten stale or boring, but because I'm completely and utterly stuck. For the next entire hour of gameplay, I find my way through some of the roughest fights imaginable, featuring ogres, orcs, armoured orcs. The final fight in particular being such a crapshoot that most of the gameplay looks like this.
Bloody hell! Your head like a kobold!
Have you ever been bullied, humiliated, and scared by someone bigger, stronger, or older than you?
Your head like a kobold!
1 solid hour, and then I finally beat these 3 orcs, only to find myself at a dead end. There's a locked door that requires a key, and there's no key to be found anywhere. It dawns on me at this point that I've fought my way up to an actual dead end. There is no key. For some reason, there is no key. And so that leaves me with one option. The tentacle room. I reload my previous save, and I try it one more time. You son of a bitch. From here, I'd like to say it's plain sailing, but it's not. I'm pretty much at death's door, and the game only autosaves the last 3 checkpoints, meaning I'm stuck in a position where I've barely got a sliver of health to get me through. After a brief fight with another mantis, we're treated to one of the strangest cutscenes I can recall from any game.
Maya! You have done well.
Stop. What the hell was that? Not even a sound effect. Let me fix that. You can't just silently evaporate the main reason I'm fighting through this game. That's out of order. We are, at least, introduced to a new speaking role, the man behind all this kidnapping nonsense, in the form of a floating head.
You have done well, my servants. I am pleased with your latest offering.
This is all well and good, but we're just about to enter the worst fight in the entire game. You can see why, right? It seems the leader of the orcs is slightly too adept at throwing fireballs constantly. Constantly! These fireballs do a ton of damage. They are incredibly fast, incredibly accurate, and to top it off, the Orc Lord himself is faster than any enemy in the game and backs off constantly. This is the point where I think I've practically soft-locked myself until I realise in the back rooms there's a potion. If I can get back there and drink it before fighting this fireball-chucking fuckwit, then there's a chance, a small chance, that I might be able to get through this. It's not gonna be easy. Montage break. Remember how I said that the removal of limbs was a nice idea poorly executed? Here's the perfect example. 20 minutes into trying to take down this stupidly unfair arsehole, I lop off one of his legs. Now watch what little effect this actually has on him. Unbelievable. Anyway, back to the montage. Finally! He's dead! Finally! And with just sheer luck on my side. The next sections of this entire stage then become a piece of piss. Firstly, you inexplicably wear the decapitated head of the orc leader. It's never explained why he chose to put the literally severed head of a creature over his own head, nor is it explained how he breathes while doing this, but it's done. Accept it and move on. You rescue a chumpy little dude who asks you to follow him, then he runs off and asks you to meet him at a big stone statue. You then run through a load of rooms full of enemies who don't attack you because they mistake you for the orc leader on account of the fact that you're literally wearing his severed head on top of your head. Perfect. Until it's not perfect because it just randomly vanishes in one of the rooms with the helpful notification, Shaman Mask's power has expired. This puts you directly into a fight, followed by more, and more, and more. Thankfully, partway through this fight fest, you pick up a Berserker potion which increases your strength by 300%. This is the only time I found one in the entire game, and it came at the perfect time, because I realise, as I continue to shred my way through an entire army, that what I'm currently fighting my way through is the exact section I got stuck on at the start of this level. Only I'm now fighting backwards through this pile of enemies in order to reach the starting area. The sense of revenge I felt after being stuck on these guys for an hour, and now being 300% more effective, was what we reviewers like to call palpable. Back to the tentacles again. I somehow managed to nail the leap first time, again, and the little pudgy man pushes over a statue, which allows me to clumsily climb my way to the exit for the stage. Now, if you're telling me that the entire point of this stage, a stage I was stuck on for almost twice the length of any other level of the game, was to get a man half my size to knock over a statue that can be found 2 rooms away from the beginning of the level, then I can officially declare this the most annoying thing in any game. Before we continue with this playthrough, I think it's important that we take a look at some reviews of the game from other sources, because this is very much a game that will divide opinion like a sword through a kobold's cock. Sadly, however, there's very few online reviews available for the game on release. Here we have GameSpot with a sentence that most definitely ages as well as fine milk.
With 3 fighters on screen and 1 wacky camera, you'd best be armed with a state-of-the-art PC with a wicked fast 3D accelerator if you hope to squeeze a decent frame rate out of this game. Even the minimum detail setting will force a lower-end Pentium to its proverbial knees. With enough horses under the hood though, Die by the Sword is graphically amazing.
I'm pretty sure that even in the year 2000, vast swathes of brown weren't exactly the pinnacle of graphical entertainment. In terms of gameplay though,
Die by the Sword is a solid action game with enough thrills and challenges to satisfy you even if you think you've seen it all. Though the ambitious control scheme is hardly perfect, it does offer you a sense of freedom not afforded by most games of this sort. And the quest, for all its frustrating moments, packs more than a few situations that make it worth the price of admission.
7 out of 10, not bad. Much higher than I expected, but then this is GameSpot. Who else do we have? No one. It seems even the Wayback Machine is no good for this game, so I guess we'll rely on everyone's favourite, critically accurate, grammatically perfect subset of review systems, user reviews. I bought the game on GOG.com, so that's as good a place as any.
It's by no means perfect, but I find myself coming back to this game to play for a bit, time after time. It's just so silly and fun. Beside that, there's no game like it that uses such controls and gives you a similar feel to real fighting. It's hard to master due to clunky sword controls, clunky movement and play forming difficult enemy encounters. Nonetheless, I'd recommend it if you're looking for something different.
You know, that's pretty accurate. What about the grumpier side of GOG?
Innovative. Tragically, that's all I can say for this game. Tried it twice, with 2 control schemes, and neither of them were right. With the mouse, everything was a wild swinging about, trying to position the sword right in an aggressively unfun attempt to land some blows while trying to figure out how to make it fun.
He continues in this fashion for at least 200 more paragraphs. A man after my own heart on the word count there, but it's funny to note that the issues they have are the same issues that our 4 out of 5 star man gave it. It seems the thing about this game that lures in 4-star men is the same thing that pushes away 2-star men. I think we need one more review to see if this hypothesis rings true.
Ultra-violence. You can cut off other people's limbs and see the blood fly in all directions. Cool. Sword fighting. Man, I would love to do that in real life.
Okay, this was a terrible idea. Let's go back to the game. So it turns out that our female MacGuffin hasn't just popped out of existence. She's still there, doing absolutely nothing, in the company of our warlock nemesis, but we are somewhere else entirely. An almost Egyptian-themed tomb of a sort, and can I just say that the path to this warlock is extremely nonsensical. How did we go from a mine to a barracks, and then through a hole into whatever the hell this is? I don't care, it's at least nice to have a change in colour scheme. This entire area is, by and large, a platforming area, which you'll be thrilled to hear because one thing a janky 3D action game needs are precarious jumps, unsupported by your character's willful inability to do anything with any degree of accuracy. The number of times I accidentally double-tapped a direction and jumped straight into the path of a death trap is innumerable. You even get this amazing section with swinging blades in which you will have exactly 0 chance of getting through unscathed, but thankfully, your man here can get smashed in the head by a razor-sharp blade and still carry on to tell the tale somehow. Your goal here is to find a number of these skull switches. Using them will in turn block off these giant dragon statues. I don't know what those giant dragon statues did, but it was certainly hinted that they were up to no good.
Something's not right in here.
Okay, I'm out of here.
One major detriment to the game, and it's really noticeable from this stage onwards, is that there are huge, bland, lifeless corridors or empty rooms, or rooms with things in them that do absolutely nothing but make Enric shout to himself.
Nothing's here!
I suspect they wanted to make these caves and tombs feel a little more grandiose, but it would certainly have been less of a slog if they'd either shortened the amount of wandering you need to do, or spiced it up with, I don't know, a shelf or two? Next up, Lava Monster. Once again, I'm practically dead, but it's fine, because as luck would have it, the Lava Monster is very confused by me running in circles and flailing my sword around.
I keep away from a run-around sewer.
That's another switch done. Half an hour of walking through corridors later, I'm confronted with a couple of issues. Giant pendulums swinging that I clearly need to get past at some point, and an invisible swordsman. Now, the invisible swordsman is no more difficult than any other enemy. It matters not one bit if I can see them or not, because I can't hit the broadside of a limousine in this game, but my complete lack of health at this point means I'm scuppered. So I figure, screw it. Ignore the ghost man and get through the pendulums. Miraculously, I manage this first time and reach a puzzle section. It's a block puzzle. It's literally called Block Puzzle. This isn't so much a block puzzle, however, as a bit of a bait and switch. You flip some controls on the wall, which makes different blocks move up and down. The idea behind this is that you need to use one of these blocks to reach the platform on the other side. It doesn't take a genius to work out that there must be another switch, however, because the block you need to jump from never moves. The hidden switch is, in fact, hidden behind one of the lower blocks. That puzzle was simple enough. It's actually jumping up there that becomes the biggest puzzle of all. Jesus wept. Jumping is an ordeal in this game. At least that's over with. It's time to flip a switch and... some stairs appear that just lead back down to where I was previously. That's strange. Have I missed something? Where's the skull switch? Oh, you son of a bitch. I've just realised what it wants me to do. You have got to be kidding me. Surely they're not expecting me to do this, are they? Well, here goes nothing. To my abject surprise, and by some miracle, it only takes me 3 tries to nail this section, and as an added bonus, at some point, I hear the ghost swordsman fall to his death and burn up in the lava. Everything's coming up, Enric. With all the dragons locked away in their slumber chambers, for whatever reason that may be, I can head on over to the throne room where I have to fight the ghost swordsman, again, only this time I've got the health to deal with him. Piece of piss. And I'm now confronted with a very strange contraption indeed. What does this thing do? Well, probably should have guessed that would happen, but I still don't fully understand what actually happened. Climb over some gears instead. Fight a grey dwarf who swings 2 weapons around like he's doing air traffic control in a disco. And then it's time to jump into a pit to... FMV time, and it appears the warlock is using grey-skinned dwarves to carry crystals around. This won't make any sense until the last level, and if you're unlucky, it won't make any sense ever, but by that point you'll have rage quit, so it's fine.
Uh-oh, this is bad. Really bad.
Well, at least he correctly predicted the outcome of accidentally pressing W twice, again, for the 4,000th fucking time. Past those crushes, the game falls into its usual flow for a while. Kill enemies, try to work out which direction to go, observe a giant laser. The usual shit. This is one of the game's very few puzzles, and it's not really that much of a puzzle, all things told. It's fairly obvious that you need to stop the water from cooling the giant laser. How you do that, however, is not immediately clear. First, a little jaunt across the pipework leads to some platforming, which leads to another piece of equipment. The second piece I found in the entire game, and I never find any more. This one increases my strength by 25%, so that's probably useful at least. Back in one of the side rooms, we fight a dwarf fella before being confronted with a locked door, and once again, no corpse has the key. After wandering around for an eternity and finding no other direction I can go in, I look up a guide that says the key, for whatever reason, is just located in the corner of this room. Why in the name of Lewis Llewellyn Locksmith would you just randomly place a key in the corner of a room behind a furnace? Why would you do this? Had the devs just given up at this point? Key got into another room, fight more dwarves, get another key, go to the other room, pull lever, stop the water, blow up machine by filling it with stuff, accidentally get blown up myself, blow up the machine again, but this time move out of the way, even though the camera does not help in this regard whatsoever. And we're here, at the end of what is an exceptionally small level. You'll no doubt begin to question if the devs were genuinely rushing their way through this latter half of the game, and the fact it was delayed for 9 months before release goes some way to confirm that. Oh well, I guess it's time to check out... No FMV this time because, well, let's be honest, there's not much more to tell. Here you'll enter the Castle of the Warlock you've apparently been hunting down this entire time, even though there was no real way to know that this was the correct direction to go in. You've made it! Huzzah! I hope you like the same textures on every wall and floor, because you'll be getting a lot of that here. Firstly, you'll need to make your way through a ton of rooms in which spooky skeletons keep doing the same "I'm not really alive, fooled you" joke about 15 times. These skeletons are absolute arseholes with armour up to the back teeth and attacks that seem to hit you out of nowhere. Thankfully, the game does provide 3 magical fountains that fill your health back to maximum, including this one that harbours a tentacle. So don't expect to walk away from that one with full health. You'll make your way past skeletons galore, traps, and all manner of health-sapping arseaches, but finally you'll reach a room that features 2 skeletons even more armoured than the last ones. By golly, these guys take some putting down, but once they're done, you're rewarded with...
What now? You dare to invade my home and disrupt my work?
Instant death. So this had me confused for a while, understandably, because the only clue you're given on how to deal with the Warlock was provided in an FMV sequence 2 levels back. Remember these big red crystals? Those are the source of the Warlock's power, for some reason. So you need to go and destroy them. Where are they? In secret rooms, of course. Now, I'm not going to cover all of these secret rooms because they're all exactly the same. They all feature walls that just move when you get near them, negating the fact they're supposed to be secret at all. They all feature the same stock crypt with the same bastard hard skeleton enemies. They all feature this weird floating... I don't want to say puzzle, because it's not. It's just a thing. And then you get teleported to the room where you have to flail your sword until you smash the crystal.
That was hard work.
Do that 3 times, then go back to the Warlock's room if you want to actually fight him.
Your vandalism has left me considerably weakened. I shall let Changa deal with...
What just happened?
Unfortunately, though, you'll get the old switcheroo and be plunged into a trap featuring Changa, a giant orc monster with a big metal arm. I beat him on the first try. I told you, this game is basically just like rolling dice. Now, once that's out of the way, you may be confused as to what you need to do next. Hit this crystal ball? No. Sit on the throne? No. Use a book?
Well, there's nothing to do here!
Oh, I have to jump through what is apparently a window. There is no indication this is a window. Jump and press C to grab ledges in the air, but you can't do that while also holding forward. It doesn't actually tell you that, but I thought it would be good to mention it now because it may or may not come back up again. So here we are, the final battle, and much like many games from this age, it's pretty weak. You climb across some ledges and find your beloved has been encased in a big crystal, or maybe she's been frozen, I don't bloody know. Ignore the Warlock, hit the crystal a few times, and that's the end of that. For a game focused on combat, the fact you don't even fight in the final battle is a rather interesting choice, to say the least. As the credits roll, you're treated to the voice of Enric, literally describing every single thing that he did in the game. I'm not even joking.
Now granted, lass, you were with me at the end. And you saved our hides, I'll give you that. But it was me who had the lion's share of the burden, butchered me way through the volcano to rescue, and precious little reward for me efforts. So next time we make camp, I'd be grateful if you'd be a bit more on your guard so we wouldn't be bushwhacked by a handful of kobolds again. All right, lass? Oh, lass. Come here. Come over here.
That's weird.
I bought this game for £5 on GOG, mostly for the purposes of making a review, because I love games that at least try to do something new, and there's not many games I can think of that basically tried to do what something like Ex Anima does, a game that is also bafflingly difficult to control, or even stuff like the VR-only game Blade and Sorcery. This was 1998. As much as we might laugh at the first page of the manual and its boisterous use of hyperbole, Treyarch truly were the pioneers of something that still hasn't been fully explored to this day. It's just that no one really wanted it, and no one really cared enough to buy it. The GOG version also comes with the game's one and only expansion, Limb from Limb, which I can best describe as the same, but more. More of the same. More sameness. It's the same, but there's more of it. For a start, you get to choose who or what you want to play through the campaign as. And with no Enric in sight, There's woman from the main game, but you can also choose to play as one of the enemies if you like, giving the expansion a hell of a lot of replay value, should you ever want to return to it. Bizarrely, starting the game as the default woman character gives you absolutely no story outside of this one piece of dialogue.
I must find her before it's too late.
Who is she on about? No idea. That's it. That's your lot. But get this, right? If you thought the main game was difficult, you haven't seen anything. Try as I might, I cannot get past the first two enemies on the standard difficulty. No matter which character I pick, no matter which weapons I choose, I am absolutely smashed every single time. So I make a decision. Turn it down to the easiest difficulty, but use the VSim mode. And you know what? It absolutely makes the game. Here's where things get a little bit weird. It seems that the difficulty affects the speed at which you swing your daft arms about, and damage is calculated based on speed. Back when I was trying VSim on the default difficulty, or even just trying it without VSim, the controls felt sluggish and unwieldy. But here, that kinetic energy, that freeform wild wailing of your weapons is whapped up to 100. And no amount of alliteration can truly explain just how much better it feels. It's still just as difficult, it's still just as wonky, but finally, I understand what they were trying to do. The DLC isn't particularly worth discussing in full. It's new enemies, it's new levels, it's annoying dialogue.
You're almost as good as me. Almost. 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 Is that all you've got?
Please stop talking for a while.
But it's more. It's more of this game, and for all of its faults, all its wrongness, the thing that elevates it above another middle-of-the-road adventure is also everything that doesn't work. And I simply can't explain it. I have loved every second of this game, even when I've hated every second of this game. It is a paradox, a game that manages to transcend the traditional methods of review, because much like those GOG reviews, the things that people love about it will be exactly the same things that people hate about it. And I somehow love and hate both things in equal measures. Treyarch, as you well know, would slowly move away from ever trying this kind of innovation again. There was a spiritual sequel in the form of the Dreamcast exclusive Draconis, Cult of the Worm, which I will be checking out, but from 2005 onwards, they climbed aboard the Call of Duty train and never stopped at Innovation Station ever again, which is unsurprising, because Die by the Sword sold less than 30,000 copies.
Three warriors are in a distant land after a successful battle, or not successful, it doesn't really matter. They happen across a crystal on the ground, and one of them accidentally smashes it with his foot, and out pops a warlock. And the warlock says to the three warriors, due to your exploits in this battle, and your success, or not success, because even the warlock's not sure, I will grant each of you 3 wishes. And the warriors are like, wow, this is awesome, because we've just had a really tough, somewhat successful battle. So the first warrior says, I would like a hoard of gold waiting for me when I return to my own land. And the warlock says, done, snaps his warlocky fingers, and the hoard of gold is waiting for him. And the second warrior's like, wow, I'm going to have a hoard of gold and gems. And the first guy's like, dickhead, because I should have thought of that. But the warlock's like, done, and waiting for him, he's got a hoard of gold and gems. And the third warrior looks at the other 2 warriors, and he's fucking clever, he's got a plan. And he says, I want my right arm to rotate constantly for the rest of my life. And the warlock and the other 2 warriors are like, right, but he looks like he's got a plan here. So the warlock's like, right. So he's just stood there with his right arm rotating clockwise permanently for the rest of his life, and they carry on. Second wish time, and the first warrior says, I would like a harem of women, which I always think is harem, but it is harem, because I've watched a lot of anime recently, and they specifically say harem. And the warlock snaps his fingers, and done. He's got a harem of women waiting for him back at home. And the second warrior is like, I want a harem of women and centaurs, for some reason. Right? You've got your harem of women and your harem of centaurs, that's the definition. And the third guy looks at them both, and he's there with his arm rotating constantly clockwise, and he says, I want my left arm to rotate counterclockwise for the rest of my life. So they're like, what? But he looks so sure of himself. So the warlock does it, because he's like, this guy's obviously got a plan. So he's just stood there with his right arm rotating clockwise and his left arm rotating counterclockwise. Third wish. The first warrior goes, I would like my own castle off a cliff top overlooking my successful, unsuccessful battle that I've just been involved in. And it's like, done. The second warrior's like, I would like a castle and 5 million acres of land. And the first guy's like, this guy's a dickhead. He keeps taking my wishes and making them better. But, you know, that's just how it is. I went first. And so the centaur, fucking hell, the warlock's like, done. And he's got his castle and his however many acres of land I've already forgotten. The third guy's there with his arms rotating counterclockwise and clockwise. And warlock's like, what is this guy doing? What's his next wish? So he says, he looks at them and he went, I want my head to nod up and down constantly for the rest of my life. And the warlock's like, Jesus Christ, if they even say that, because I don't know if warlocks would really. Jesus Christ! What have I said? That? Who is that? The warlock's like, right, I'm doing these wishes. This guy's has obviously got a plan. Wow, you know, what a man. So they all agreed to meet in 3 years just to see what's going on. The warlock's like, I'm definitely going to be there because I want to see what this guy's plan was. So 3 years later, the first two warriors are waiting in the tavern, talking about like the second one's got a load of centaurs with him for some reason because he's sexually aroused by them, I assume. The third guy kicks the door open because obviously he can't open the door properly with the way his hands move. And he looks at the two guys and the warlock's on the table and he says, guys, I think I fucked up.